Imagine being humiliated by the one who's supposed to love you, right in front of someone you trust. This crippled wife faced her worst nightmare when her wicked husband tore her down. But what happened next shocked everyone and changed their lives forever. Lucy was a queen in her world, a self-made millionaire, the CEO of a huge company that bore her name. She built her empire from nothing. Years ago, she started with just a tiny shop selling handmade products. Today, her business stretched across cities and countries, employing hundreds and touching thousands of lives. Every morning, her sleek office filled with busy staff who looked to her for guidance. She was strong, fearless, and unstoppable. But on this bright morning, fate was about to challenge everything. Lucy woke early in her luxury apartment, sunlight spilling in like a golden river. She dressed in a sharp, elegant suit, her power uniform. Today, she had a meeting with international investors that could launch her company onto the world stage. She kissed Daniel goodbye as he brewed coffee in the kitchen, his steady presence calming her nerves. "I'll be back before you know it," she smiled. "I'll be waiting," Daniel replied warmly. Lucy stepped out onto the bustling city streets, confident and ready. As she crossed the busy road, the distant roar of a motorcycle grew louder and louder. Before she could react, a speeding bike came hurtling around the corner, out of control. The rider tried to brake, but it was too late. The motorcycle slammed into Lucy with a force that sent her flying through the air. She hit the pavement with a sickening crack. Pain exploded everywhere. Her legs, her arms, her back. She felt as if her body was shattering piece by piece. People screamed around her, some rushing to help, others frozen in shock. Her vision blurred. Sounds faded. She was slipping away. The ambulance arrived, sirens screaming, cutting through the chaos. Paramedics moved quickly, lifting her carefully onto a stretcher. Every bump on the way to the hospital was agony. In the emergency room, doctors rushed to work. An X-ray machine hummed as technicians took images of her broken body. Lucy's heart pounded in her chest as the images appeared on the screen. The lead doctor's face was grim. "There are multiple fractures," he said softly but firmly. "Both legs are severely broken and the arms have complex fractures." Lucy's breath caught. "Will I walk again?" she whispered. The doctor hesitated. "It's too soon to say. We will do everything we can, but it will be a long, difficult road." Days blurred into nights. Lucy lay in a sterile hospital bed, the cold metal of machines and the antiseptic smell filling the room. Every movement sent sharp waves of pain through her body. She thought of her company, her dreams, her life. Would she still be the woman who built everything? Daniel was there. Every day he held her hand, whispered encouragement, told her stories of hope. But inside, Lucy felt fragile, like a bird trapped in a cage of pain and uncertainty. Weeks later, the doctors told her she was strong enough to return home, but now she would need to live in a wheelchair. Daniel gently helped her into their beautiful house, pushing her chair through the grand doors. The world felt different, smaller, harder, but Lucy's spirit burned bright. This accident was a fall, but not the end. She was ready to fight for her life, her business, and the future she had dreamed of. Lucy's return home was bittersweet. The house was the same, big, beautiful, filled with memories, but everything felt different. She was no longer the strong woman who walked through those doors. Now she was confined to a wheelchair, her body aching and fragile. Daniel was there to help. He had arranged for a maid to come live with them, someone to assist Lucy with daily tasks. Her name was Naomi, a young woman with a gentle smile and kind eyes. Lucy was grateful for the help, knowing she couldn't manage everything alone. For the first few days, Daniel seemed caring. He helped Lucy bathe, dressed her carefully, and made sure she had her medicines on time. Naomi was quiet and respectful, helping with the little things, bringing water, tidying the room, pushing the wheelchair when Lucy needed to move. But as days passed, Lucy noticed a change in Daniel. The warmth in his eyes grew cold. His smiles became forced. His words, once gentle, now sounded sharp. One afternoon, Lucy asked Daniel to help her reach the phone. She wanted to call a friend, someone to talk to. Daniel sighed loudly. "Can't you do anything yourself? You always want to bother me." His voice cut through her like a knife. Lucy swallowed her pain. "I'm trying," she whispered. Daniel shook his head, walking away. Naomi watched quietly but said nothing. The next day, Daniel came home late. The house smelled of cigarette smoke and something else, perfume that was not his. Lucy waited for him to speak, to ask how her day was, but he ignored her completely. One evening, Lucy struggled to get out of bed. She needed to use the bathroom but couldn't move easily. Daniel was in the living room, watching TV, not paying attention. "Daniel," she called weakly. He grunted, not looking away from the screen. Lucy's heart sank. Naomi was nearby, but she didn't offer help. Lucy felt invisible. Days went by like this. Daniel's visits shorter, his words colder. He stopped helping with Lucy's care. He left the house earlier, came home later, and spent less time in her presence. One afternoon, Lucy was sitting by the window in her wheelchair when Daniel and Naomi came in, laughing softly. They didn't notice Lucy watching. Daniel pulled Naomi close and kissed her cheek. Lucy's throat tightened. Daniel then looked at her and sneered. "You're useless now. You can't even do the smallest things yourself. What good are you to me like this?" The words echoed in Lucy's mind. Naomi smiled awkwardly, avoiding Lucy's gaze. Lucy's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She clenched her fists, knowing she had to be stronger than ever. This was only the beginning. Lucy's days at home grew darker with each passing moment. The man she once loved, the man who promised to stand by her side forever, was becoming a stranger, a cruel shadow who filled her life with pain instead of comfort. Daniel and Naomi were no longer just careless or distant. They began to punish her. It started small. Daniel would snap at her for the smallest things. If she dropped something, he would shout. If she asked for help, he would ignore her or complain loudly. One cold evening, Lucy sat in her wheelchair near the dining table, hoping for a simple meal. Naomi was in the kitchen, pretending to clean but clearly avoiding her. Daniel came home late, his face red from drink. He looked at Lucy with disgust. "You're a burden," he said coldly. "I don't have time to care for someone who can't even sit properly." Before Lucy could say anything, Daniel grabbed her wheelchair roughly and gave it a hard kick. Lucy felt the chair roll suddenly. She lost balance and fell onto the cold floor with a heavy thud. Pain shot through her body, sharper than ever. She tried to scream, but only a small sound came out. Naomi looked at the scene without moving, her eyes cold. Daniel laughed harshly. "Get up, useless woman. Stop acting like a child." Lucy's arms shook as she tried to lift herself. Tears ran down her face, but she refused to cry out. Days later, Naomi's cruelty surfaced. One afternoon, Lucy sat weak and hungry, waiting for her meal. Naomi brought a plate but stopped suddenly. "No food for you today," Naomi said with a smirk. "You should learn to fend for yourself." Lucy's stomach growled, but she said nothing. As Lucy's hunger grew, Naomi took a cruel step further. One evening, Lucy was in the bathroom. Naomi followed, carrying a cup of hot water. Without warning, Naomi poured the boiling water on the floor near Lucy's wheelchair. Lucy screamed, startled and terrified. Naomi laughed. "Be careful. This is your home now. Learn to live by our rules." Daniel stood in the doorway, watching silently, his eyes cold and empty. Lucy felt trapped in a nightmare, but inside her heart, a fire still burned. She knew she couldn't let this cruelty break her. Every bruise, every harsh word, every cold night only made her stronger. She whispered to herself, "This is not the end. I will rise again." The silence in the house was heavy, thick with tension that Lucy could almost touch. She sat in her wheelchair, her body aching from the accident, but her heart was breaking in a way no pain could fix. Daniel had become a stranger, cold, harsh, and cruel. The man who once loved her was gone, replaced by someone who only saw her as a burden. One evening, Daniel entered the room without knocking. His face was twisted with anger and frustration. He stared at Lucy as if she was nothing but an inconvenience. "Look at you!" he spat, his voice sharp and full of hate. "Sitting there like a useless piece of trash. You can't even do the simplest things yourself. How am I supposed to live with this?" Lucy's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She looked away, ashamed but trying to stay strong. Daniel took a step closer, towering over her. "You think I want to spend my life with a cripple? A woman who can't walk, can't move, can't even take care of herself? I'm sick of this. Sick of dragging you around like some dead weight." His words cut deeper than any wound. Lucy's hands trembled as she gripped the wheelchair's armrests. Daniel sneered. "I need a real woman, one who can give me children, not some broken thing who's good for nothing." He laughed bitterly. "You're useless, Lucy. I can't wait for you to get better because honestly, I don't think you will." Naomi stood quietly nearby, watching with a cold smile. She didn't say a word, but Lucy could see the approval in her eyes. Daniel continued, his voice rising. "I'm done pretending. You're a failure, and I'm tired of wasting my time." Lucy felt the walls closing in. The pain in her body was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. Suddenly, Daniel grabbed the handle of her wheelchair and gave it a hard shove. The chair rolled back, and Lucy fell heavily onto the floor. The shock and pain made her gasp. She tried to reach out, to push herself up, but Daniel just stood there, watching. "You're pathetic," he said coldly. "Maybe falling on the floor will teach you to be stronger." Naomi laughed softly. "Maybe now you'll realize how useless you really are." Lucy's cheeks burned with humiliation, but deep inside, a small fire of anger began to grow. Daniel's harsh words, his cruel actions, they only made her want to fight harder. She wiped her tears silently and whispered to herself, "I will not stay down. This is not who I am." But Daniel wasn't finished. Later that night, Lucy overheard him talking to Naomi in the living room. "We can't wait anymore," he said angrily. "I want babies, and she can't give me that. Naomi will be the one who gives me what I want." Naomi smiled, pleased with the plan. Lucy's heart broke again, but she knew something. This was just the beginning of the fight for her life. The house that once echoed with Lucy's laughter and dreams was now a prison, a place where her freedom and dignity were slowly being stripped away. Confined to her wheelchair, weakened by her injuries, and betrayed by the man she loved, Lucy faced a new kind of battle, one that threatened to destroy everything she had built. One cold morning, Daniel stormed into the living room, his face dark with anger and impatience. Naomi followed behind him, holding a thick stack of papers and a pen. "Lucy!" Daniel barked, his voice harsh and demanding. "It's time to sign these documents." Lucy looked up, her heart pounding. She recognized the papers. They were legal documents transferring ownership of her company and all her properties to Daniel and Naomi. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I won't sign anything," Daniel sneered. "You don't have a choice. You're weak and broken. You can't run your company anymore. It's better for everyone if you give up now." Naomi sat beside Lucy, her smile cold and calculating. "Think about it, Lucy. You can't walk, can't work. Let us take care of everything." Lucy's mind raced. The thought of losing everything she had worked for was unbearable, but Daniel's threats and Naomi's icy stare left her feeling trapped. They brought her to the study, a grand room filled with books and expensive furniture, a room where Lucy once made decisions that shaped her empire. Now it felt like a courtroom where she was the accused. Daniel forced her hand toward the papers. "Sign," he commanded. Lucy's fingers trembled. She looked up at Daniel, searching for the man she once loved, but all she saw was a stranger filled with greed and hate. "I can't," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Daniel's face twisted with rage. "If you don't sign, you'll lose everything anyway. I'll make sure of it." Naomi stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "You're useless like this, Lucy. Nobody wants a cripple running a company. Sign the papers and save yourself the pain." The humiliation was unbearable. Lucy felt the weight of their cruelty crushing her spirit. Days turned into nights filled with torment. Daniel and Naomi mocked her every move, reminding her of her weakness and failure. One day, Daniel pushed her wheelchair roughly down the hallway. "Look at you," he spat, "a shadow of the woman you used to be." Naomi laughed cruelly. "You're nothing now, Lucy, just a broken shell." Lucy wanted to scream, to fight back, but her body was weak and her hope was fading. Yet, deep inside, a small flame of defiance still burned. She promised herself that no matter how dark the night, she would find the strength to fight back. Because this was not the end of Lucy's story. The grand house, once a symbol of Lucy's hard-earned success, had turned into a chamber of torment. Each day was worse than the last. The laughter and warmth had vanished, replaced by cold silence, harsh words, and unrelenting cruelty. Lucy was trapped, her body broken, her spirit battered, but not yet defeated. From the moment she woke, she was met with disdain. Daniel, the man who once promised to love and protect her, had become her worst enemy. His eyes no longer held kindness, instead they burned with anger and contempt. "Useless," Daniel would mutter under his breath whenever she needed help. "A weak shadow of the woman I married." Naomi, once just a housemaid, now reveled in her newfound power. She walked the house like a queen, but her smile hid a venomous heart. She took every chance to humiliate Lucy, knowing the wife's broken body left her vulnerable. One morning, Lucy asked quietly, "Can I have some water, please?" Daniel snapped, "Why should I waste my time serving you? You're nothing but a burden." Naomi, smirking, carried a glass filled with cold water, but instead of handing it to Lucy, she threw the water on the floor, splashing icy drops onto Lucy's legs. The cold stung Lucy's skin, but worse was the shame. She sat soaked, unable to do anything but watch as Daniel and Naomi laughed. Another day, the punishment was physical. Lucy was in the living room, struggling to reach a book on the table. Daniel, already annoyed by her slow movements, lost patience. He grabbed the wheelchair's handle and shoved it with force, causing Lucy to topple backward. She hit the floor hard, pain exploding through her arms and back. Daniel towered over her, eyes flashing. "Maybe this will teach you to be careful." Naomi stood nearby, clapping mockingly. "Good lesson, madam." Lucy's breath caught as she fought tears. She slowly pulled herself up, ignoring the sharp sting of humiliation that burned hotter than her bruises. But the punishments were not only physical, the emotional cruelty cut deeper. At night, Daniel would lock Lucy's bedroom door, leaving her alone in the dark, while he and Naomi laughed and whispered in the next room. Sometimes, Naomi would stand outside, calling through the door in a cruel voice. "Sleep tight, useless woman. You don't deserve the comfort of this house." Days blurred into nights filled with fear, loneliness, and endless suffering. Once Lucy's medication was withheld. Naomi ignored her desperate pleas, watching coldly as Lucy's body trembled from withdrawal. Daniel said nothing but watched with a satisfied smile. Meals became scarce. Naomi would bring Lucy barely enough food to survive, sometimes nothing at all, leaving her hungry and weak. In the cold silence, Lucy's mind fought hard to stay strong. Each insult, each shove, each cruel word chipped away at her body, but her spirit refused to break. She whispered in the darkness, "This pain is temporary. I am more than this suffering. Even when her body ached and her tears fell silently onto the cold floor, she held on to one truth. She was a fighter. Daniel and Naomi had taken everything, her mobility, her dignity, her peace, but they had not taken her soul. Her eyes, though filled with sorrow, burned with the fire of survival. Lucy knew this was the darkest hour before the dawn, and she was ready for the fight that would come. The air in the house was thick with tension, each moment heavier than the last. Lucy sat in her wheelchair, exhausted, bruised and drained, not only from her body's wounds, but from the unrelenting cruelty she faced daily. The man she once loved, Daniel, and the woman who had betrayed her trust, Naomi, had crossed every line. That day, Daniel was colder than ever. The gleam of greed shone in his eyes as he barged into the room, clutching a thick folder of legal papers, the final step in stealing everything Lucy had built. "We're done playing games," Daniel growled, slamming the papers onto the table. "Sign these, Lucy. Transfer everything to me and Naomi. It's over." Lucy's lips trembled as she looked down, her hands shaking, but she knew what was at stake: her company, her home, her future. "No," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I won't sign." Daniel's face twisted with fury. "You don't have a choice. You're weak, broken. Without you, this company can still live. Without you, I can live." Naomi stepped forward, her eyes icy. "Sign the papers, Lucy, or we make you wish you had." Suddenly, Daniel grabbed Lucy's wheelchair handle and pushed hard, sending her crashing onto the floor with a painful thud. Lucy gasped, clutching her bruised arm, but refused to cry out. She was trapped in a nightmare, but not defeated. Daniel sneered, "Maybe lying on the floor will teach you to listen." Naomi laughed cruelly. "You're nothing now." Days before, Naomi had withheld Lucy's medication, watched her hunger, ignored her pain. Each act a calculated punishment. Now, the threats escalated. Daniel pulled out a knife, its blade catching the light ominously. "Sign, or this ends tonight." Lucy's breath hitched, terror rising like a storm inside her. But at that moment, the door burst open. Uniformed police officers stormed in, voices sharp and commanding. "Daniel Okoro, Naomi Alex, you're under arrest for assault, intimidation, and attempted coercion." Daniel's rage turned to panic as officers cuffed him. Naomi's confidence shattered. The doctor who had quietly accompanied the police stepped forward. "Lucy, can you stand?" the doctor asked gently. With slow, steady determination, Lucy rose from the floor, walking unassisted. Daniel's face drained of colour. You can walk," Lucy smiled, the fire in her eyes brighter than ever. "I never lost hope," she said firmly. "I made a plan with my doctor to protect everything, because I saw who you really are." As Daniel and Naomi were led away, Lucy knew this was just the beginning. Her empire was safe, her dignity restored, and her fight had only just begun. The day Daniel and Naomi were taken away felt like the first breath of fresh air after a long, suffocating storm. Lucy stood tall, not just in body but in spirit. The woman who had once been broken was now whole, stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim her life. Her company, her empire, was safe. Thanks to the lawyer she had secretly trusted, every legal document was secure, every asset protected. Daniel's attempts to steal had been stopped just in time. Lucy began the slow journey of healing, not only her body, which grew stronger with each passing day, but her heart and soul as well. With the love and support of her daughter and close friends, she rebuilt her confidence. She returned to the office, greeted by the warm smiles of employees who never gave up on her. Her story spread far and wide, not as one of defeat, but of courage and resilience. Lucy often said, "No matter how dark the night, the sun will rise, and so will you." The pain she endured became her strength. The humiliation became her motivation. And as she looked out over the city skyline from her office window, She smiled. Her future was hers to write, bold, bright, and filled with hope. Lucy had fallen, but she had risen, and this time, nothing could stop her.